I'm here at the Portland Retro Gaming Expo in Portland, Oregon, where I got to interview two of the original programmers for the Atari 2600, David Crane and Garry Kitchen. Since we're talking video games, I'm your host, Andrew. Welcome to 4Geeks Media. David Crane and Garry Kitchen, how did you guys get involved with Atari?
Yeah, I started at Atari in 1977. Atari had just released the Atari video computer system, the 2600, and they were looking for programmers to make games.
I had been working in the toy industry. The electronic toy industry was getting hurt by this new Atari machine. So I went out and bought an Atari, opened it up, reverse engineered it, but I learned how to do the platform by reverse engineering it, and then I got into the game industry.
So what are you guys most proud of?
Having founded Activision, we created the third-party software business. Atari had a game machine, and Atari made games for it. Mattel had a game machine called the Intellivision, and Mattel made games for it. What Activision did was, for the first time, we made games for someone else's computer. By creating that industry, that's the industry, video game industry of today.
I did a product called Garry Kitchen's Game Maker, which allowed you to make professional quality games. It was a suite of tools. And I get a lot of people from the game industry who are serious professional game designers who come to me at shows and say, I want you to know I got started in the industry because I bought Garry Kitchen's Game Maker and did games on that, and that really fueled my passion for making games, and they ended up being professional game designers. So I'm pretty proud that I was able to, affect their career choice like that. It was pretty exciting.
Do you both make games for the iOS now?
We do.
You do? How does making games for the iOS now compare to making games for the Atari way back then? What are the different challenges that you face, or is it a lot easier, a lot harder?
What's interesting about the video game business is the consoles when we started were pretty simple. They didn't have a lot of capability. They were very challenging because they were also very limited, but they were somewhat simple. And as the game business evolved, games became bigger and bigger and more complicated. So now a game for a console might take 100 people, 3 years, and $50 million to make. That's a big game today. You don't have those kind of budgets on the iPhone games. And that's kind of a good thing. They're smaller, you can do it with smaller teams. So Garry and I both prefer working with a small team and doing a game for the iOS than necessarily getting involved in a multi-year, 100-person, multi-million-dollar project.
Those smaller bite-sized games that broad demo of people play rather than the narrow-focused hardcore games, that's called casual games now, and that's what we really enjoy. Casual games is what we were doing for all those years. There was never a name for it. Now it's called casual games, and we like that. We like iOS games because they're small. One person can write a game. Now, you bring an artist in, you bring audio in, but for the most part, one person is making the game experience, and that's really what we're very much about.
So independent gamers now have it a lot easier, and they can make games that are like the Atari games by themselves a lot faster. Do you think that limits their creativity, or that just leaves room for more creativity?
No, we love the fact that there are tools out there where people can make games. I mean, I have an 11-year-old son who's going to make games, and he's using Game Salad, and he's using Garry Kitchen's Game Maker on an old Commodore. So, I mean, the more you can open up opportunities for people to create, better it is.
The downside of what you're talking about, though, is they should really be, experimenting, going out on a limb, going out some other direction. Now that there's millions of people making games instead of hundreds, we ought to see some really creative stuff, and that's what I'm looking forward to.
Well, I think we are from the indie community. You see a lot of really wild creative things, but you've got to start somewhere. You start with copying, and you go from there.
So Pitfall was remade into Pitfall: The Lost Expedition. How was it watching a game that you created for the Atari, a really classic game that anyone can talk about, seeing it remade? Were you involved in that?
I was not involved in any of the remakes. I look at games that come out that have the Pitfall name on them, and I really just think of them as it's a different game that Activision decided to call Pitfall.
What's the most challenging thing you guys faced back when you were programmers for the Atari 2600?
It was the size of the ROM. The first game that we did on the iPhone was a game called Arcade Hoops. The icon on the screen of the iPhone for that game is about 76K. So the icon on that game is 20 times the size of Pitfall, and that's the icon. So when you were trying to do Pitfall or Pressure Cooker or Designer's Pencil or any of these other old titles that we worked on, we had such little memory, so much constrained space to do anything. I mean, you would agonize over adding one character that was, 32 bytes. So that, to me, that was it. It was memory size.
The Atari 2600 didn't have a bitmap display where you could just put up a picture. You actually had program running synchronous with the scan of the television, changing the pixels on every scan line.
So you basically had to draw every dot.
Yeah, draw every dot.
And lastly, what are your favorite video games, or what are some of your favorite video game franchises out there?
I actually have a warm spot in my heart for Medal of Honor on the PSP, which is probably at this point in time a 5 or 6 year old game, but it's a game that I have triplets, kids. They're 12 years old, 3 of them. So I like Medal of Honor on the PSP because we all own PSPs, all 4 of us, and we can play a death match with all 4 of us wandering around an environment playing Medal of Honor. So right now, that's a game I would say I really like.
I'm often asked the question, favorite games or whatever, and I have a cop-out answer. My favorite game is the one I'm working on right now, because it has to be, because I can work 16 hours a day on it. So you basically have to really like what you're doing. And for people who think they might want to become video game designers, it's one of the toughest ways to make an easy living. Is that the expression?
Yeah.
It is. Just prepare yourself to work every minute of the rest of your life.
David Crane and Garry Kitchen, thank you very much. I really appreciate this.